Christianity and Judaism have suffered a harrowing collision with modernity over the last 200 years. I mean, they have just had their religions mastered by science and secular politics and common sense to a degree that has not occurred in the Muslim world. The Muslim world has not had a reformation, and it has not had a renaissance. The Muslim world is amazingly isolated from the currents of criticism that have beaten back the fascistic and insane practice of religion that endured for centuries under Christendom. I mean, we were burning witches alive and heretics for 500 years in Europe. We're not doing that anymore, courtesy of scientific understanding of medicine, for one thing. I mean, we don't believe now that people are dying because their neighbor cast a spell on them. That's a good thing. That was hard fought, that battle.
You're talking about practices in a pre-modern society, and you know, when people don't understand the cosmos and they don't understand human bodies, irregardless of religion, and you can read, you know, what anthropologists write from New Guinea or anywhere else when they deal with a pre-modern society, that's how they react. But to somehow blanket, you know, 1 billion people as pre-modern. I lived in Cairo. It's one of the most artistically and intellectually vibrant cities I've ever been in.
Let me just make it very clear. I'm not doing that. I'm not saying that all 1.4 billion Muslims are Al-Qaeda. Okay, I'm not saying that. And there's no doubt that some significant percentage of Muslims don't take their religion all that seriously. That is a good thing. I mean, so that they're moderate. They're moderate because they're not forcing their kids into madrasas and seeing everything through the prism of theology.
Sam,
but the point is, so are we just disagreeing about sheer numbers, or are you denying that any subset of the Muslim world really believes what they say?
I'm saying that what you describe is how a pre-modern group or society exists anywhere on the planet, not just Muslims. That's how pre-modern societies work. That's how tribal societies work. They're superstitious. Honor killings, by the way, having lived in the Middle East for 7 years, are not that common. But let me talk a little bit about the mood of the Muslim world. I was in the Arab world after 9/11, covering Al-Qaeda, and there was absolute revulsion and shock and empathy for us for what happened. The chief Sunni Islamic leader, Sheikh Tantawi in Al-Azhar in Cairo, condemned the attacks of 9/11 as a crime against humanity, and then went on to denounce Osama bin Laden as a fraud, somebody who had no theological training and no right to issue fatwas or religious edicts. The tragedy is not the fault of the Muslim world. What happened is that we fail to understand that the only way to fight terrorism is to isolate terrorists within their own society, not to begin dropping iron fragmentation bombs all over the Middle East. And what we did as a society was become tribal. We drank that dark elixir of American nationalism, which is not only a form of self-exaltation, but a form of racism. And anybody who didn't support us, including the French, including people who share our values and are our allies. Remember all the jokes about French culture and French identity? Let's remember the French were right. There were no weapons of mass destruction. He wasn't tied to Al-Qaeda. And let me finish. Okay,
Sam. But you're arguing against positions I don't necessarily hold.
I'm talking about the characteristic of the Muslim in the Arab world, which does not fit with the picture you're painting. And if we had had the courage to be vulnerable, if we had realized that this was a war of shadows, an intelligence war, we would have a huge percentage of the Muslim world on our side. And I can tell you that because I was on the streets of Tunisia, Cairo, Beirut. I was there.
Right. Well,
so let me just finish.
I'll give you a chance.
Okay. You talk about, you dismiss this notion that somehow despair is unimportant, that these people react like barbarians because of the Quran. you know, if you go back and read the great philosophers on totalitarianism on Nazi Germany, Hannah Arendt, Karl Popper, Fritz Stern, The Politics of Cultural Despair, they all write that what propelled the fascists forward, that what propels all totalitarian movements, and I include fundamentalists, Jewish fundamentalists, Christian fundamentalists, Islamic fundamentalists, Hindu fundamentalists. Karen Armstrong has done great work on this. What propels them forward is despair, personal and economic despair. And you see it within the United States, with the Weimarization of the American working class, the rise of an American oligarchy, the huge disparities that are creating. You can't maintain a democracy in an oligarchic state. And what's at fault in the Arab world is not Islam, but scummy little dictatorships like the one run in Saudi Arabia or Hosni Mubarak's in Egypt. It's the political system that keeps most people crushed under their heel. Egypt is a deeply repressive state, which we give $3 billion a year to. And let's also finally not forget that every time Israel sends those F-16 jets and Apache helicopters to strike refugee camps in Gaza, the fragments of those bombs have Dayton, Ohio, and other cities on them. And we are complicitous very much in the suppression and abuse and killing of innocent Muslims.
Okay, well, let me deal with your taking the measure of the Muslim world. Happily, we do not assess public opinion by having New York Times journalists go out and live in the Muslim world and make friends and get a vibe. I mean, this is not a single well-run opinion poll would be worth 1,000 years of you wandering around the Middle East.
Well,
I mean,
come on.
No. Okay, how many? That's not meant to be hyperbolic.
Wrong.
Well, let me tell you. How many?
You can't possibly believe that about polls, Mike.
Well, all we've got are conversations. All we've got are conversations.
He's lived there for 15 years, for God's sake.
How many people did you ask? How many people did you ask?
I've done it for 2 hours. How long, Go on.
How many people did you ask whether they supported suicide bombing? You could have lived there a long time and asked that question a lot and still not have done anything like the job that Pew did when they went into 9 countries and got a random sample, insofar as that was possible, of Muslims and asked 38,000 people that question. Okay, the responses were appalling. And the responses were appalling in countries that were the most cosmopolitan and the least benighted by pre-modern standards. I mean, this is, and there has been poll after poll after poll. None of them support this sanguine idea of Muslim public opinion.
I actually studied the Pew poll carefully, and what it said was that in the face of an occupation where the occupier is hurting your country and your people, that this is a legitimate attack because you don't have alternative means. That's what the Pew poll said.
It's in my book if you want to see the question. And the question was,